Okay, I had one of my viewers ask me about super fatting and how to go about doing it. And so I said I would do it. And so here I am. I'm doing a video on super fatting. Now I have some various containers because over here I have a whole bunch of crock pots going. And so I'll start out with a small one and I turn it on, and on my scale I turn it on, and that zeroes out the bulb. And now I'm going to do a 7% super fat. Now when I do my recipe on soapcow.com, I change it where it standardly says 5. I change it to 0. And that means that if you let them do the calculating, you will have a 5% super fat, so that when your lye goes into your oils, 5% of the oils that's in there will stay in there for super fatting, and they will not be sulfonified. So you don't want to use a 5% recipe with your soap calculator and then add extra super fats. But I like to control what is super fatted and what is not super fatted. So there's some oils that I put in my soap that I don't want laying around in the soap later. I want to control what is super fatted and what is not. So now with olive oil, you have to use a low grade, cheap grade olive oil in your soap recipe, because the fatty acids that is in the extra virgin cold pressed olive oil will not sulfonify well or completely, and it just doesn't make good soap. So but I would like for this kind of olive oil to be laying around in my soap bar to super fat and to nourish and moisturize the skin. So I am going to control what is super fatted and what is not super fatted in my soap. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 ounce of the olive oil. I'm really close now, so I'm going, so there we go. So I have 1 ounce of that awesome green, super pressed, first pressed, cold pressed, expensive, health food store, best olive oil I can find is going to be what is there to nourish these people's skin when they purchase my soap. And then there is the organic coconut oil. And I'm going to add 1.5 ounces of organic coconut oil. So we've already got 1, there's a half. Perfect, 2.5. So now I am controlling what is super fatted in my soap by, when I go onto soapcow.com, I'll put a link in the bottom of the description. Up at the top, there's a place where it says super fatting, and it's just sitting there with a little box, and it has a 5 in it. I just erase that and I put 0, so that when my recipe is calculated, the amount of lye that goes into my oils is supposed to 100% make all of my oils into soap. There'll be if I used it just like it is, it's great for laundry detergent because there's no super fats in the soap. And then I go back in and I super fat the soap with what I want it to be super fatted with. Now another thing I add is glycerin. Glycerin is an emollient, Well, if I could get the bottle's lid off. Hang on a second. I'm going to have to sit you down. There you go. Alright. And so, I need a tablespoon. I'm going to have to cut the video off, and I'll put the 2 videos back together, so just hang on. Okay, I got my tablespoon. So now I am going to add a tablespoon of vegetable-based glycerin that I bought. There we go. Alright. That I bought from New Directions Aromatics in Canada. And then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon. Whoop. I'm adding more than a half a teaspoon. I got that about right after the spillage. So I'm adding a half a teaspoon of vitamin E to my super fats. When that comes all out, it's 3.2 on the ounces. Now, this is ready to go in the crock pot of hot processed soap when the soap is finished cooking. And so you can, you've seen me do that in my videos. If you've not, go and look at one of my videos on how to make soap, and I'll show you me super vatting the soap. Now, there's other wonderful oils out there. There's shea butter. There's cocoa butter. There's nut butters. I'm told you can even put peanut butter in your soap. Pistachio butter, you can make it by hand in your blender or food processor. There is all kinds of wonderful nut butters and different things out there. But I like coconut oil and olive oil. Now, to each his own. And I may later, I don't know, I've spoke about this before, but I live in the South in Alabama, and people don't want to pay me, $8 and $12 a bar. And when you buy the more expensive items, such as shea butter, cocoa butter, a lot of those things, and I've just not tried the nut butters, but I am seriously planning on it. You do have to be careful with your allergies for people that are allergic to nuts. If you're selling in a market, you need to make sure you have a sign right beside that soap that said nuts are in this soap, because you don't want somebody with severe nut allergies to pick that soap up, stick it to their nose, and take a big deep breath, and that might cause them to have issues with their allergies to nuts. So, and that's one of the reasons that I haven't tried the nut butters yet. But because I have to be cautious. I sell my soaps in, flea markets from time to time, but mainly farmers markets, craft shows, and I always have a bar out there for people to pick up, touch, and smell. And so you have to be careful with nuts. But there's all kinds of wonderful oils out there that you can use. And I'll put a few links on the description for you to check out a few options for using different things. But I can afford and offer my customers awesome skin conditioning with this wonderful green first press, cold pressed olive oil and organic coconut oil. This I can offer my customers, and it is wonderful. With the addition of the vitamin E and the glycerin, I've lost lots and lots of wrinkles off my face since I've been super fatting and using real soap on my face. I was getting wrinkles around my mouth real bad. My skin was getting thin. And with this recipe for super fatting, and using this soap and this soap only, not changed with any other fancy, nothing else have I changed in my regimen, I am losing my wrinkles. So you cannot complain, or I cannot complain about this, but there are, other oils out there. And I just wanted to make sure you were aware of them. So now, after I've done this one, this dish weighs the same amount. So I can just put it on there, see it zeroes right out. But this one, it weighs differently. Oh no, it doesn't. Look, it weighs the same thing. I just got these at a yard sale. When I find 3 small containers like that, or 4, all the same, I'll do it. But now this one will weigh. See, this one weighs differently. So you just turn it off and turn it back on, and it will zero out the scale, and then I can start all over again, adding my olive oil and then my coconut oil my glycerin, and my vitamin E. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this little segment on super fatting. I may tack on adding it to the soap, so just hang in there with me. Okay, now I'm going to super fat the soap. I've also added some colorant to this, so you're getting more than just what I had put in there that you'd see me put in there. I've also added some colorant, and I'll get a spatula and get the rest of that out. I added yellow to this soap, and that's all you do. I set the super fats right next to the crock pot while it's hot, and I don't it doesn't touch, but I just sit it there beside it, and that melts the coconut oil, and it just sits there. And so now our soap is a nice yellow, but it also has, I don't know, it just has a really wonderful lush look about it. But that is how I super fat soap. I will go in, see we've got some residue. I'll get a spatula and get the rest of that in there. But this is how I super fat my soap. I just measured it out for us, and then when the soap is finished cooking, I turn off the crock pot, and I've set it right beside here. The only thing I added is I added my colorant, and then I put it in, and now I will let it cool, and then I will put in my essential oils, and then I will put it in the soap mold. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this little video on how to super fat. Please hit the like button, please subscribe, and oh, please leave me some comments. Feel free to ask questions. I love to help. I love to hear your comments. I love to get to know you on YouTube. So feel free to type a little bit below, and do look in the description because I'll have some links for you. Have a great day.